Hi folks, my name is Franco Tenelli and today I'm going to talk about projection. I receive too many letters asking me about what is projection, how to make one's voice projective and all other things. And of course I published a couple of videos concerning projection, and this is the next one. The point of this video is not to let you hear what projection sounds like, because through the media there is no way you can really 100% judge the voice. And that's why videos about projection oriented on the sound, oh okay, I got it, I've heard it in a video, now I know how to project my voice, is very not so instructive. Anyways, I will try to use the maximum of media possibilities to show you how projective voice works, what is projective voice, of course, and other interesting comparisons or analogies with projection. So, let's start. Now, you may ask me, what is the link between Fach, or your vocal category, and your projection? There is a very strong link, and people don't really understand the link between the style you're singing and how big your voice is. Now I'll give you a very cute example of my own experience. I was doing some of those versatile concerts where I include classical music and I include popular music, and most of them were popular music. The person who hired me, she knew me as a very big projective voice. And when I asked her would I have a mic during the performance, she told me, no, you don't need a mic, Franco. And it's not a big venue, it's like around 400 people. I still demanded a mic, and she was surprised, and I had to explain to her, listen, when I'm singing with my opera voice, in operas, I'm a dramatic tenor, I have a big projective voice. And of course it would be an insult for me if anybody gives me a hidden mic or anything. Though it was not a big venue, like around 400 people, which sounds very small. But it was a really like a very, or I would say, swampy acoustics. And it's not only for that. People think that if you sing, let's say, in opera, this is a common misunderstanding. If you sing an opera and then you sing, let's say I sing bossa nova, I sing with the same voice, with the same value, and even with the same Fach, which is not correct, I'm sorry. My experience shows me that Fach is connected to the style you're singing. And if, like, I'll give you an example. And again, don't necessarily think that it is true for every voices. Let's say if you're a baritone, and you're a lyric baritone, and you start singing more dramatic roles, you did not modify your technique. You felt that your voice in this case, in Mozart for example, it was fine to project, and in Verdi you have difficulties to project. And it's not my suggestion, but it's one of those things when Fach depends on the style you're singing. So if you're singing more Verdian style, some of you who are baritone singing Mozart are probably good Verdian tenors. Of course, that is a question, I mean, until proven. But there are many examples of lyric, even dramatic baritones turning into tenors, being dramatic tenors, or, you know. So Fach actually is important when you sing in a particular style. Now, I won't go far into this thing, but trust me, those singers who are in opera, they very well understand what I'm talking about. Now, let's go to something that is more of a poetic nature. Comparisons, analogies. Now, when we talk about projective voice, we're talking about mostly Chiaro, scuro voice, classical voice, and Chiaro, scuro voice. So I have a very interesting analogy that I was watching the documentary about how Japanese make samurai's Bushido sword. Very interesting documentary. And the logic of the construction of the Bushido sword is the same at Chiaro scuro. It struck me like, oh my goodness. And even it's not just the construction, the point of a two-layer sword, which I directly connect to Chiaro scuro, where Chiaro is the surface of the sword, which cuts. It's a very sharp. And at the bottom, in the middle, there is a softer metal that actually sustains the blow. So why they put it in two layers, not in one layers? Because they notice, yes, they can make a very sharp sword, even sharper than Bushido one. After the first strike it will break because it has no solid cushion, if you like. The same thing happens to the voice who has too much Chiaro without connection to the scuro. And of course, if it's too much scuro, then the Chiaro is less and the voice turns into a woofy one. It's another disbalance. So amazing Bushido swords connection. I was just make martial arts and singing are so close. And you know that most of the martial artists were opera singers, of course Chinese opera singers, but including Jackie Chan and even Bruce Lee, he attended some opera classes. In a water hose, the projection of the water would depend on how many water is going through the hose and also on how narrow is the hole. So the narrower the hole, the more projection. Of course, I have to warn you, resonance projection is not exactly a total analogy hose. It might suggest us that we can send our voice somewhere else, and it might suggest psychologically that we will be thinking of some kind of projective ideas, sending voice over in a last place, which is incorrect, because projective force in voice or any other instrument which is classical, which is not amplified, depends on a combination of the frequencies that this particular voice has. And you know, the only projective voices, real projective voices, are classical voices and opera voices. That's why I'm touching them in this particular case. I'm not touching the microphone projection. They also call it microphone projection, but mostly microphone projection is a microphone projection, not the voice projection. Since I'm talking about projection and I'm talking about classical voices, so I would like to give you an example of so-called estimates of the voice, let's say, among projective voices. Basically, you can put it into two categories and more. The first category is projective voice. That means simply that the voice that sings at this particular repertoire, in this particular aria, with an orchestra, with a relatively large hall, is heard clearly and does not need an amplification. You know that that will depend, of course, on the repertoire you're singing. If you're singing Mozart, you can be very projective in the big halls with a relatively smaller voice. If you sing dramatic Verdi, when orchestra is too heavy, or Wagner with too much metal, too much brass, you have to project over and through this orchestra. So, of course, it may equally seem projective, but definitely the projective of the Wagnerian singer is much bigger than projection of the Mozartian singer. Though, in actual performance you won't feel it, because you will find a great balance, and you say, wow, this guy had a big voice in Mozart, no problem. Check him out in Verdi. You might not even hear him most of the times. So, projective. And then we have woofy. Projective and woofy. Now, woofy is a disbalanced type of a voice. What means disbalanced? Disbalanced when too much scuro, meaning technically that your larynx it's way too low, and because your larynx is way too low, you have a large projection possibilities or resonance inside. But because you don't know, or either simply don't have the strength to support that weight, you still support it and it turns to be woofy. Now, I will try to demonstrate you a woofy sound through the camera, but of course I doubt that the camera will catch it the same way. Or maybe with some, if you pay attention, you will still hear the differences. Now, I purposefully make my voice woofy. Sometimes these voices are called large. Why? Because they do make an impression in smaller venues that they have big voices. But the moment they leave small venues and go to the big stage, their voices mysteriously disappear. We know it's mysteriously, they say, it's no mystery anymore. Acousticians know that problem. And this is what, again, I've just put the category of projective and non-projective, but you can also add up another category, large voice. So large voices, they make impression in a small venue, especially in a small room. But when they go out and sing in real acoustic environment, they become very small projectively. And I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to explain why. As I talked in my previous programs, I insist on one tembral singing, and I insist that there is no registers. There are no registers. I repeat, this is Appoggio school. If somebody tells you, okay, I'm a Appoggio teacher, I teach you how to sing with registers, that's a fraud, because Appoggio does not use registers. Appoggio uses one tembral connection and singing is called Chiaro, scuro. Now, the balance between this Chiaro, scuro and of course the actual volume of every Chiaro, scuro is important. Because in camera you won't hear, again, the camera would act like, it would deceive you in a way. You might even think when I sing with a woofy voice, the camera will catch it and will make it bigger. I call it Kaufman effect. My sound may really sound very large, but in fact it is a woofy voice. I explain why. Because the woofy voice lacks Chiaro balance. So let's say if I do this, let's say La fleur que tu m'avais jetée, from, let me do it first a woofy way. La fleur que tu m'avais jetée. Now you may think, oh my goodness, this is how dramatic it is, how big this voice is, and it sounds big actually in the room. Trust me, if I go with the sound in real performance, me singing with the orchestra at the same, it will be like almost, okay? So that would be the effect. So this is a deceiving sound, because what I do, I can change my voice, I can put a little Chiaro, scuro, but let me do the same thing with a real voice, which will sound less dramatic, but in fact it is more dramatic and more projective. Oh. Okay, there was a fire alarm. I hope it's not my singing Chiaro, scuro. Now the difference between the first woofy sound and this sound, that in my voice the Chiaro was more in balance with scuro, in balance for the theatrical reasons. And so and my voice sounds more bright than it would sound than you thought it was a dramatic sound. Now I'm not saying that, let's say, I've heard Giacomini live, so it was really surprising for me that this big voice, this really large, as I thought, and a dramatic voice, was able to project so well. Giacomini is one of the phenomenal voices that this, one of the exceptional voices, because it sounds like baritone in recordings, a dramatic baritone singing tenor, and it does sound that almost like that. No, we never sound exactly like that, but it almost sounds like that in real life. You may ask why then we don't really concentrate our mind on only Chiaro, since Chiaro is a projective force. Definitely, if you look at the diagram, if you sing with a falsetto voice, La fleur que tu m'avais jetée, that voice is projective around 3-5 meters. If you sing with classical voice, not necessarily big, but already using Chiaro, scuro, La fleur que tu m'avais jetée, and then the projection will go definitely 5-10 meters. And then if you're an operatic singer, it goes and then if you're a dramatic singer, and then it goes again, the camera does not catch the all nuances and the big volume. If you look at the diagram of the volume, so-called falsetto voice that I demonstrate looks like this, classical voice looks like this, and opera voice looks like this. So it's almost 8 times bigger in recording diagram. But in our the way we hear, we don't hear that difference. The microphone smooths it out. Why don't we concentrate more on Chiaro that some teachers do? Okay, let's do Chiaro, maschera, Chiaro. But the point is that Chiaro without connection to scuro is a register. And that's not appoggio school. If you're connecting to the register, you will never really successfully connect it, because a register is a little switch here. Very simply, register, chest, lower larynx position, passaggio a little bit in the middle, and head voice, higher position. That is in simple, in 3 words, what are registers. So Chiaro scuro, classical voice, only accepts one position of the larynx. So we don't switch it. We all keep it in the same place. So that's why Chiaro does not exist really without scuro. Of course, they could be different balance. Let's say if you have more Chiaro and less scuro, you're most likely to be a more like full lyric voice. You can be a very strong voice. I'll give you an example. Del Monaco is another example of stentorian tenor. What is a stentorian projection? Stentorian was in Greek, they called a singer who could over sing 100 people. The biggest projecting voice on earth, and there are exceptions. And Mario del Monaco was called a stentorian tenor. On the other hand, when you hear Mario del Monaco, you hear that his middle and high notes are very strong. They were like trumpet. I mean, they impressed everyone. His low register was disbalanced. When you hear, it's not the same balance with Giacomini. Del Monaco probably had more projected voice than Giacomini. Chiaro without scuro turns into a head voice. You can do nothing about it. Remember that all the voices and all the sounds are based on the lower sounds. All the frequencies and overtones are based from the low upwards. That's why the low is very important to understand the high note, a connection of one register. Of course, if you're using different registers, then this formula doesn't work. But when you work with one register, always the lowest note is the most important note that gives you the main Chiaro scuro tone, from what you're basically jump and bring all the phrases around. I also have to tell you about a phenomena that not everyone is familiar with, unless you're an experienced opera director or experienced opera coach. As you know, and those singers who ever auditioned for the jobs, especially in New York, you know, NOLA studios and other studios that are around, amazing studios in New York City. And you know, sometimes the studio is so small, and even a big company takes this small studio to audition singers. My great suspicion is that you cannot really draw a conclusion about the voice projection, how big it is. I tell you more. Usually, not always 100%, but usually big projected voices sound terrible in small rooms like this, or you know, like in some audition places. It's not pleasant to hear them because they're deafening you. This phenomena, it's very difficult to really make a difference between projection and the loudness. It's not pleasant to hear a big voice in a small venue. And only few directors might appreciate that, oh, I know how this voice is gonna sound but most of the directors don't bother with that. I mean, what they hear, they get. So what I mean is that the miscast happens a lot because they hear a very beautiful voice singing in a small room, a small audition place, and it sings beautifully and everything is fine, and they hire him over, let's say, the singer who is more rough and just screamed into his ears, and then they go in the real performance, and in the real performance they hear the singer cannot project well, and then all the problems start. So my suggestion is for any serious companies, and of course Metropolitan Opera and other really great companies, they make real serious auditions in the hall they sing, because that's the only way you can really understand how the voice projects and how it sounds, how beautiful it is. So it's not advantageous for big, huge voices to audition in small studios. So guys, if you don't get your jobs, don't get necessarily upset, because as I explained, your voice most probably sound really terrible, not because it's terrible, but it's, anything will sound terrible if it's too loud. You agree with me? If I put the guitar right into your ear, it's going to say, oh, what a terrible sound. So this is one of the reasons of the miscast, and this is my suggestion for, I know some companies just do it because they don't have money to hire, real big halls, but anyways, they might even spend much more money coping with this problem of hiring singers with no projection. Now, for your curiosity, I will tell you why some lyric voices are taken as dramatic voices, and almost without any problems sing dramatic roles on stage where they don't have projected voices. This is basically not a very fresh phenomenon. There were singers, and I'll give you one singer that I loved very much. It was a Russian Muslim Magombayev. He was Azerbaijani singer, but he performed in Russia. He studied in Italy, and he had very beautiful voice, an expressive voice. He was called Russian Mario Lanza in a way, and I really like him. He made a couple of movies singing Rigoletto and all dramatic roles and everything, but I was a little boy when I heard him singing live in Opera House, and I was a big fan of opera since I was 5, so I was around 10 years old when I heard him. I remember clearly that singers around me, I didn't understand much back then, projection, but they were calling him Muslim Mikrofonovich, which in Russian means Muslim with a microphone. This is a derogatory thing, because he could not project well in this particular opera, though it was not a dramatic opera. But he was a smart singer. He never repeated again in his life. He realized that he's not meant for acoustic opera singing, so he made great movies, and there are still people who believe he was a dramatic baritone, because in the movies you hear him as a dramatic baritone, absolutely full illusion of being a dramatic baritone. Now today, a lot of, not a lot of, but quite a few singers using this trick now with the technology help. And a lot of people ask me about many singers, about Chvorostovsky, they ask me about Jonas Kaufmann, for example. And I have to tell you that, I both respect, saying that for the record, I both respect these two great singers, both Jonas Kaufmann and Chvorostovsky. I call them great singers. Without technologies, those singers would not be singing today in opera. Some people hate, for example, Chvorostovsky, and they call him, oh, he's like a total whatever, nothing. Yeah. I respect Chvorostovsky very highly as a musician, as a great vocalist, and I respect equally Jonas Kaufmann as a great voice and a great vocalist, but they are not opera voices, and they need technology to be what they are today, especially singing. The controversy is that Jonas Kaufmann has a very dark voice, and it's a beautiful dark voice. It's not a big voice, it's a large voice. This is the large voice, it's not projective, and when it's mic'd, it sounds really big and dark, and that's what dramatic voice is supposed to sound. A dramatic voice is supposed to sound dark. It cannot be too bright. There is a reason for that. I talked about the styles, Verdi, why Verdi puts more dark voices into more drama, This is all connected. This is the knowledge, this is the style. And that's why some voices who are dark, but unfortunately not projective enough, they could not sing in opera before, because they would be, I mean, who cares if you're dark, if we don't hear you. But today's technology allows many great musicians actually to be heard. And you say, well, you're being naive, Franco, this is money involved. Of course they won't be talking openly about this. But what makes me not pleased is that they lie to the public. Public doesn't know that. And some of them, maybe one of you who are listening and who are fan of singers like this, like I mentioned, you probably saying, oh, Franco, you don't know, you exaggerate. What do you mean, small voice? What do you mean? Or I don't care. Well, if you don't care, it's up to you. Again, what I'm saying, I'm not against any progress in anything, and I use microphone when I sing other styles. But I find that it is a beautiful style, opera. The real acoustic voices are so much suitable for operatic singing that, of course, I have my own old wish of an old singer, of old style singer, if you like. But you cannot stop the progress. The only thing has to be open is that they should not be lying to the public. It's so secret, okay, I'll give you another example. I think I gave you this example before. For those who are a little bit doubtful about what I'm saying, the microphones and stuff, they don't believe in that and whatever. But I know voices very well. I know how voices sound. They say Chvorostovsky sound without the mic, or other singers sound without the mic. I know. So, of course, based on that, I know how they're going to sound in the big operas. One very strong example. I mean, there's no secret I think at least for this singer, almost everybody agrees that she has a small voice, is Cecilia Bartoli. And Cecilia Bartoli had so many unsuccessful auditions to Metropolitan Opera that she almost quit. I mean, they liked her, but she had such a small voice they couldn't hire her. This is from Metropolitan Opera News, I'm telling you. So eventually she became a big star of Baroque and concert singer. So the money brought her to opera because they said, listen, we're going to sell tickets. Okay, with Cecilia, people are going to come. But what we're going to do? I mean, if she sings with her voice, it would be not a success. They amplified her. She was personally mic'd. Now, when you say, how could you know she was personally mic'd? I spoke to a singer who was also a leading singer. I don't want to mention his name. A friend of mine, but he sang with Cecilia in the same performance. And this is what I hate. When people are doing something they hiding from others, they're lying. That was expressed like when Cecilia came for the last non-on-stage rehearsals, she told everyone that she was marking meaning that she does not sing with a full voice. And a friend of mine already had like a question, marking? But Cecilia, that's how you sing usually. Okay, I shut up. So they went to the first rehearsals on stage, dress rehearsal with orchestra. Suddenly Cecilia Bartoli sounds like Maria Callas. And it was really a surprise. I said, well, I didn't sing with her for 3 years. So maybe that, 3 years changed her voice so dramatically. Basically, he had how they discovered she was personally mic'd in her wig. When he had a duo with Cecilia, his voice would be getting larger. And he told me that I was using this because it was so easy to sing. I should just come close to Cecilia Bartoli, close her to the wig, and sing an aria as almost half a voice, too much of the struggle with the voice. So you see, that is what is not correct, because the lie, the people believe, and maybe that's why they sell tickets. If the manager of a company comes and says, today this and this singer sing with the microphone and the rest are not with the microphone, I mean, what the reaction is going to be? I mean, most of the people who believe they sing acoustically won't buy ticket anymore. So that's why they're hiding this. That's very easy explanation for that. Okay, anyways, that was one of my politically incorrect lessons. Thank you very much. Until next time.